But I'm on this kick at the moment. I'm watching like a lot of Joan Crawford and Betty Davis's films. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I have no idea why. It just sort of spontaneously happened. And on the back of that, watching Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which is like one of the best films ever made. But it's so horrible. It's
Oh god.
it's so disturbing. Honestly, there's something about Betty Davis's performance. She portrays like mental illness so sincerely.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about it where you think, is this real? Is it because do you know anything about like the background of that, like the feud between her and Joan Crawford, who's a co-star in it?
No, I don't know.
Oh my god, honestly, they hated one another. And
Oh,
it's
no.
like it's one of my little obsessions. I love reading about the feud between Joan Crawford and Betty Davis because they were vile to one another.
It
The
must be the
things
stuff
they
of
pulled-
legend.
Oh, it is. Honestly, it is Hollywood legend. The things they did to one another, to undercut one another, to undermine one another's successes and victories, and spread rumors, and it's unbelievable. The viciousness of it was just unbelievable, and they brought that to this dynamic in on screen. So it feels really, really sincere. The hatred and the bitterness. And at that point, both of them were going through some stuff. You know, they'd had various addictions, they'd had like divorces, and Joan Crawford was losing all of her money, and Betty Davis did actually have mental health problems at that point. So there's something awfully real about watching that film.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to watch it again now.
Oh, I can't get over it. Her performance. I mean, Joan is great too. Joan Crawford is amazing in it, but Betty Davis as Blanche. Oh my God, it's so complete. She's the kind of character where she's a bit like certain portrayals of the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
You sincerely don't know how that character's going to react to stuff or what she's going to do, and it makes her really scary.
Yeah.
For such an old film, for a film that has a lot of the cliches of its era,
Mm-hmm.
there's some it gets under your skin. It makes you feel, I won't watch it again for a while.
Scarred you for a little minute.
Yeah, but there is I don't know whether you ever saw it, but there's a great dramatization of that exact feud. It's called Feud. It's a series that's on Amazon, and they've got Susan Sarandon playing Betty Davis, and it's Jessica Lange playing Joan Crawford, and they are perfect.
Oh, I love Jessica Lange.
Me too. I've got honestly anything with Jessica Lange, even like how American Horror Story, where some of the seasons are great and some of them are not so great.
Yeah.
It's Jessica Lange in it. Oh,
yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the good seasons if you got Jessica Lange.
Totally. Anything with her in it. And I mean, Susan Sarandon's an absolute powerhouse as well. So getting those two together,
Yeah.
they are so brilliant in that series. They must have done so much research looking at how those women spoke and moved, and
Mm-hmm.
they feel so real. You're watching it, and it's like it's a bit like a documentary almost. It's got that feeling about it rather than a drama.
Yeah. Oh,
I've seen it so many times, but I'm going to watch it again. Just because.
Well, I'm gonna have to now.
Oh, honestly, I can't recommend it. I mean, funnily enough, it's a Ryan Murphy series, like American Horror Story.
Oh, is it?
But I think it's, for my money, I think it's probably one of the best things he's ever done.
Oh, I'm very intrigued.
Really, it captures both the reality and the myth beautifully. I mean, from what I understand from my own reading, because I've read so many books about that whole thing, the series, if anything, underplays how desperately vile they were.
Desperately vile is such a good description.
But I can't. I find it difficult reading like about the situation. I find it difficult comprehending how awful they were to one another.
Yeah,
Like if they just stopped, because they
yeah,
were doing. There came a point where they moved apart. They were operating in different circles. They were not in one another's lives anymore, and it had all died down. But they couldn't keep themselves from interfering and just bringing it back up, turning the screw a little bit more. Um, it would have just died away. It would have just gone away, and that would have been the end of it. But no, they couldn't let. It's like it was a hatred for the ages. That was.
yeah. That's true hatred.
Isn't it right? And as bizarrely attractive and indelible as love.
Yeah,
They were definitely the most important people in one another's lives. You
yeah.
know, their kids, their husbands, all of that kind of went by the wayside. In comparison to this, they were the most enduring relationship to one another.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Isn't it? I cannot leave it alone. I can't get over it. But anyway, yes, thank you so much for coming on, Kayleigh, by the way.
Oh, it's my
Um,
pleasure. Thank you for having
oh,
me again.
oh, always, anytime, anytime. And also, I went out and actually, I know you sent me a PDF of your short story collection, The End, but I went and bought the book because,
Oh, thank you.
no, not a problem, not a problem. I mean, for one thing, I love these books. The Black Shuck Shadows series.
Yeah, I collect them.
On me too. They look so beautiful on a bookcase, don't they?
Yeah, all lined up next to each other if you're collecting them as well.
Yes, in order, obviously. Yeah.
Yes, of
They
course.
are so stylish. That's
Yeah,
what I love about them. I love the way covers like symbolically reflect what's going on inside. I love that. And the theming of them.
yeah,
I've just got a thing about short story collections that have a running theme where it's not just, collection X or collection A. I love that. I love that so much. And yours, the title says it all, and the picture of the mushroom cloud on the front, of course.
yeah. I was so
Yeah.
pleased when Steve sent that to me. I was like, that's exactly.
Honestly, Steve does good work, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah,
He does good work. It's
yeah,
beautiful. I mean, and I tell you what, I love the theme of this one because I think not just after COVID, but generally, it's on everyone's mind, isn't it?
yes. Well, the end. Yes, it's
You
one of
know?
my favorite topics in horror.
Yeah, and I think we are seeing there's a lot of apocalyptic horror at the moment, isn't there? There's a
Yeah,
lot of it out there, and I think that's why I think what you're getting is sort of like a reflection of systemic breakdown, ultimately,
yeah,
because that's what horror does, doesn't it? At its best, it reacts to and reflects what's going on in culture, but it's the subconscious stuff that nobody wants to talk about effectively. It's
yeah,
the nightmare stuff.
yeah.
So the minute I got this, I was in. Yeah.
Oh, well, glad to hear it, and I hope it didn't disappoint.
Not at all. No, there's a couple in particular I really loved. I loved the opening one, The Claim They Stake. I thought the minute I read that, I was like, I love the way you like that you took a very particular kind of apocalyptic scenario. It's almost like the suggested apocalypse, where it's almost it's the David Icke, Nibiru, reptilian conspiracy theory stuff, right? Treated it completely seriously, like down the line, completely seriously. I thought that was a really clever way of examining that.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure. And I loved the paranoia of it. I love the paranoia of it, where because you are seeing things from the perspective of Billy, and through suggestions that he's had issues in the past. You
Yeah,
don't know if he's reliable or not.
yeah. I really I redrafted that one loads of times because I couldn't quite decide where I wanted to go with it in the end, but I was happy with where I landed.
Yeah, I liked it too. I really liked it, and I like the way you kind of like straddle the ambiguity throughout, up until the end. I thought that was really, really cool, because it's a difficult thing to write about, that kind
Yeah.
of conspiracy theory, because it can so easily lead the reader in the wrong direction. I mean, I was reading it and thinking it'd be very difficult, but really, really fun to expand on this. Because I think like the idea could expand into a wider mythology. It could be like novel length easily.
Yeah, I had many drafts of it, because I had some longer drafts, some shorter, and then I started thinking, oh, I think I could expand, but then I wanted to. It was really like the overall theme that I wanted to expand on. I was like, well, I can do that with the rest of the book.
Yeah, of course, of course. But I liked the fact that in this one, the apocalypse is it's already happened, hasn't it? Like these creatures are already embedded, and that's it. It's over already. There's nothing really Billy can do. He's just kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, that's my favorite kind. I think that's one of my favorite kinds of sort of like horror main characters, is when things are just a bit like out of control. And
Yeah, I like that.
yeah, and in comedy I enjoy. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, go on.
I was gonna say in comedy, which this particular story wasn't, but I really enjoy unfortunate characters where things just happen to them.
Yeah, but there's nothing they can do. That is like a running theme in this story. In fact, the collection has that, really. Almost every story has that, where characters they're operating in mythologies or circumstances where sometimes they think they know what's going on, and so they assume completely what's going on, and then it's revealed that not at all. In fact, my other, like, the one I really, really responded to was Omega.
Oh, thank you. That's my favorite one.
I loved that one. I think the reason I loved that one so much is because it chimed with like an idea I've had floating around my own head for the longest time, which is, of course, it's the notion that you could. It's exactly what you do. It's exactly what you manifest in the story, which is you could have like a rapture event as it's detailed, as it's proclaimed by your sort of evangelical fundamentalist Christians, or whatever branch of fundamentalist or literalist you want to talk about. You could have it down to the wire, where there are angels and where there's an ascension, and where everything happens as they proclaim it's going to happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean even then that they're right.
Yeah, I had I think a few things probably inspired that one. That story initially was headed in a completely, similar sort of type of scenario as what you get, but it was going to be a bunch of people on a beach all catching fire.
Right.
But
Okay.
then I saw Saint Maud, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, they've done it.
Yeah. So I started thinking, what might be worse if you're someone that's in that group. And I'm afraid of heights.
So yeah, delving deep into like your own personal phobia here then, yeah?
Yes, and I'm a huge Midnight Mass fan. I think we talked about that last time. And the sort of the interpretation of the Bible in that, I was like, that is so clever. So I can't remember what the timeline of me. I must have watched Midnight Mass before I wrote that story, because I'm thinking about when it came out. But yeah, I think that might have been somewhere in the back of my head as well.
It is. I mean, I just love the fact that like the main character, I love the way you can not only see her realization, but her losing her faith, basically, as this is happening around her. So yeah, there's a lot of damage there. It's bleakly funny in its own peculiar way, and there is, for those of us who don't really like that kind of ideology and have real problems with it, there is a kind of grim satisfaction as well.
Yeah.
I'll totally take that.
I probably looked quite evil as I was sort of like smirking away to myself writing that, because I knew where that was going where it was going, and I'm also somebody who I don't have an issue with anyone that has a faith particularly, but I do have an issue with the actual Bible, which that might make me unpopular to some people, but and I've read it, so you know, I don't think it's a great book to base your moral principles from if you've read it in its entirety.
Not at all. No, when you've got like, you know, bits like, you know, that bit of Exodus they always cut out. That whenever they do an adaptation, they always go up to the point where after the Israelites have escaped Pharaoh and the ocean is closed over the Egyptian armies. It ends there. It ends there. They never carry on, because if they did, you'd see God ordering the Israelites to slaughter the Midianites, like to take their land and murder them, and it's not nice. It's not good. You know?
There's quite a lot of instructed murder.
Yeah,
For a book that where most people just remember thou shalt not kill.
Yeah, which is fair enough in and of itself, but yeah, and I can see why they don't carry on that story ever. Although it would be interesting to see the sequels, wouldn't it? You know, if someone had the guts to do it.
Yeah, we'll make it like an 8-part series.
Yeah, I mean, my God, it would be unpleasant.
I do mine the Bible a little bit for sort of like ideas, because I do think I'm not a religious person at all, so to me that is just a book. And it's full of quite like scary ideas to me. So
absolutely. I mean, Revelations is brilliant. I mean,
that's my favorite.
Me too. It's. I'm telling you, whoever wrote that, I'm sure they were on something.
Do you know?
Maybe they. Yeah, maybe they found some mushroom or something, you know, up in the mountains or whatever. But they were tripping when they wrote that.
I was talking about that to my husband just yesterday, and I said that, you know that South Park episode where they open the gate to Imagination Land, and then they bring in Michael Bay, and he's like, and then we can have and then the meteor can come to that's what just Revelations reminds me of, like that kind of energy.
Yes, yeah. Honestly, it is bonkers, Revelations, but it is by far my favorite of the books of the Bible, by far, because it's so lacking in literalness. You know, most of the other books there's like this happens and then this happens and then this happens. Revelations is just mad. It's imagery. It is mad, bonkers, crazy imagery all the way through, and it makes not a lick of sense, which I love.
The beasts with all the heads with the uneven number of eyes and the trumpets and the, you know, there's a lot of
Babylon and all of that. The monsters are great. That's another thing I like about it. It's got great monsters in it. You know, if I'm ever stuck for a monster, if you go and read Revelations, you'll find one somewhere, and it'll be so freaky weird.
Yeah, it's a good read, I will say.
It is. I mean, I loved Dead as well. I mean, Dead made me laugh. Dead, it really made me laugh. It's got proper horror in it as well. I mean, when the thing comes out of the dirt, that's pretty horrific. But I loved the observations of Grace after she was dead. I mean, like the neighbor she doesn't love.
Oh yeah.
I love that. I love the fact, like, you know, the ultimate has really happened to you at this point. You know, you're dead, you're done, it's over. And you're still, you know, we're still thinking about how much we're annoyed by that nosy neighbor or that old woman or whatnot. I mean, that's very human. I like that.
I don't know what it says about me that is something I've noticed in my own writing. You know, like when you reflect on your stuff later. Yeah. And I do very often write characters that are just generally annoyed.
Yes, and Grace is annoyed. Like, more than scared, more than upset. She's annoyed about it all. And
Yeah.
like, she does. I mean, she makes some effort to even save the neighbor that she doesn't like, but she's a ghost at that point. Effectively, there's not really much she can do. And I love the way, like, it's effectively a kind of zombie apocalypse story, yeah, where
Yes, the opening of one, I suppose.
yeah,
Um,
it just sort of extrapolates from there. It just, there's nothing she can do about her body, which is now just operating on its own, just biting
yeah.
people.
So, for anyone who might be confused, this particular story is about a girl that is a ghost and a zombie at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, there is a kind of, I mean, like underneath, and it's funny. It is a funny one, isn't it?
Oh,
There's a real sort of like sardonic undertone to the whole thing.
my general sort of principle of life is because people have many hardships, and the way that I choose now at this age, I'm starting to understand old people that just don't give a shit anymore. So I just choose to find everything funny now. So if something bad happens, I'm like, right, look for the comedy, because there's nothing I can do about it. So.
Yeah, I just love the fact that, like, Grace, I mean, like I said, she tries, when she realizes kind of what's happening, she tries to save her boyfriend, but it's kind of like, she has this, when she's a ghost, she has this attitude of like, oh, even when it's effectively killing him, she's kind of like, oh,
Oh God.
for God's sake, it's like this whole day has been a nightmare, but in a nightmare in a very conventional way. Her feelings on the matter are really kind of like, oh, I've got home and there's a leak, or I've got home and things aren't going properly. I love that. I think treating like a kind of mythical, supernatural apocalypse with that attitude.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Some of the feedback I've had from this book that's been really nice for me is that everyone seems to have like completely different favorite stories.
Oh, right, that's interesting.
So with Corpsing, my first collection, most people liked the same two stories in that as their favorites. But this one, anyone who's talked to me about it has said, "Oh, I really like this one or whatever." So that's made me feel like maybe I've done a little bit better with this collection overall.
Yeah, I mean, what I liked about like each of the stories, it's, I mean, obviously the running theme is apocalypse, but each one is a very different type. It's a very different sort of frame of what apocalypse means, and they're very, very, very present day. I like that. It's very present day. Each one of the different types of apocalypse is something we all recognize, either from sort of conspiracy theories that float around on the internet, or like mythical conspiracy theories, or religious conspiracy or religious ideas of apocalypse. I like that. I really like that. I mean, just like baking.
Oh.
Just that is so funny. It's just like the young witch who can't be bothered.
Yeah.
It just can't get it right. Doesn't really understand the consequences of not getting it right.
Yeah. I enjoyed writing that one. I was sort of like tittering away to myself as I was typing.
Yeah, I can see why, because like in her own way, she's kind of blameless. It's not necessarily her fault. You've got the mom who insists that she goes along,
Yeah.
even though she's not properly there yet. And then they don't really give her the information that she needs properly, do they? To be fair.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that there were some themes I might have been working with in each of those stories that I didn't realize like I was actually working with until way later, when people like yourself like talking to me about them, because that one, I think that's just a whole generation gap kind of story with like lost information and priorities and things.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love that. And what I like is it would have been so easy to make her the sister who makes it go all wrong. It would be so easy to make her just hateful, to make her just like the villain of the piece, or the vessel for all of the blame and the wrongness. And the story doesn't really do that. He is to blame, but not really. Not really. It's kind of the parents' fault, isn't it? And that's very interesting. On like when you're talking about sort of generational or intergenerational horror, because you've got
Mhm.
several layers going on in this. Even though it's a very funny, oddly light story, there's several layers of generational kind of neglect going on here.
Yeah, it's I think anyone that has siblings as well has probably at some point, if especially if you're the older sibling,
Yeah.
there will have come a point where you wanted to just go off with your own friends,
Yeah.
and you were forced to,
Mhm.
to bring a younger sibling with you that didn't even really want to be there.
Exactly right. Exactly. It's that weird thing that happens to parents, isn't it? When they have children, where they some switch goes in their mind and they forget what it's like to be a child. They forget
Yeah,
completely, and suddenly they don't understand. They don't understand the world of children. They don't understand what's going on, and they try to force their own template of what it means onto all of their children, regardless of age or circumstance, you know. And I
yeah.
mean, in this instance, obviously, the ramifications of that are fairly profound.
Yeah, and it's like it's well meaning, I think, from parents most of the time. Like they just want everyone to get along nicely, and but yes, people are, people are different from each other, especially as they get older. So it's
That's it. That's it. I mean, I and it's interesting. I just like the fact that it starts so small. Starts, it is kind of like if you didn't know any better, you'd think it was like domestic teenage witches who don't really have any power at all, not any real power. They're
Mhm.
just sort of playing at occultism, you know?
Yeah,
Uh, but obviously that's not the case, and what they're doing actually, despite like the teenage trappings that they have, is
yeah.
really profound.
I really apocalyptic fiction is like right up there for me in
Yeah.
my favorite horror subgenres, and I also really like witches
Mhm.
and demons and stuff, and it's
Yeah.
the kind of stuff that I can't seem to like. I know there are books out there, but
Mm.
like scary adult witch horror is surprisingly hard to find because
Yeah, it's a hard one to write, isn't it? I imagine it's a genre that isn't it hasn't had, you know how like, when The Walking Dead came out, suddenly everything was zombie apocalypse fiction. It was everywhere to the point where it burnt out, and then you got Twilight kind of informing a load of vampire romance and whatnot. The
yeah.
witches haven't really had that for a long time. There hasn't been that thing that's sparked off that huge efflorescence of witch or occult fiction.
Yeah, I find it that we're lacking in witches and werewolves.
Yes, yeah, and
There's
it's
way more of
interesting.
everything else.
Yeah, werewolves are very difficult. I find they're very difficult to make credible. You know.
Yeah, I think that the issue with werewolf stories, in my opinion, is that because the sort of metaphor behind werewolves is like
Mhm.
duality
Yeah,
and maybe like suppressed parts of your personality, I think it's kind of hard to write a werewolf story that's about something else, maybe. I
yeah.
think that that's what it's a kind of it's just such a common theme, and it's like it's usually someone is struggling with the beast side of themselves or
It's
whatever.
very, yeah, it's very codified, isn't it? It's very codified, and it's hard to break out of that and make it into something more resonant or more profound. I mean, there are rare examples. I mean, things like Ginger Snap, for
Yeah, it's
example,
great.
was
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant because I mean, werewolves, lycanthropes in general in mythology, have always been phenomenally male. Like
Yeah.
almost down the line, they've always been a metaphor for repressed masculinity, ultimately, for sort of like, the id and the appetites and the atavistic side of men, ultimately.
Hmm.
But obviously, I mean, when you look at werewolf mythology, it obviously makes sense to make it about womanhood and to make it about the lunar cycle and the menstrual cycle, and that makes so much sense.
It's so funny that you should say that because I'm currently working on a whale story
Oh,
that's
oh,
I think that you might enjoy based on what you've just said. I'll have to send it to
oh,
everyone.
okay.
I
Yeah.
need some
Oh,
I need some sensitivity readers though
oh,
because
okay.
I'm having a bit of a
I can't really say anything about it apart from I'm
Oh,
having a bit of an issue with one element of it.
okay,
So
interesting.
I'm going to have to appeal to the wider reading public to let me know if I've done an offence. So
Oh, oh, right. Okay. No, I'd love to read it. Love to. I'm always, I mean, I say werewolves are a hard sell, and they kind of are for me. I find that a
yeah,
lot of werewolf fiction and cinema is like you were saying, it's very down the line, it's very predictable, and there are very, very few examples where it sells the horror of this thing or even the appeal of this thing. I mean, that's something we've seen with vampires a lot. Obviously, after Anne Rice and whatnot, they became very desirable entities rather than horrific entities.
yeah,
um the werewolf is a bit more difficult in that regard, primarily because werewolves, first of all, the transition tends to be involuntary. It's linked to the cycle of
yeah,
the moon or whatever, so you can't control it. And often, when you become the wolf itself, you are not that creature. You're sort of out of control, and you're slave to your appetites and to its instincts and whatnot. Also, transformation is often painful, in like
yeah. And like,
astronomically painful.
and a lot of times people don't remember what they did when they were a wolf either.
Yeah, so it's not like being a vampire where you are in total conscious control of what you're doing.
Yeah,
You're something else. It's an affliction, isn't it? Ultimately, I mean, that's the other. That might be an interesting way to go, actually, for a werewolf story, because that one of the other elements of lycanthropy is that it's a disease, right? It is something that's spread by bites and through fluid, and
yeah,
it's an affliction,
yeah.
and that's kind of interesting. I like that angle of it.
Yeah, I've read a few werewolf books
Mhm.
recently that I liked. Dave Jeffrey wrote a great little novella called Tooth and Claw.
Oh yes, yeah.
That was all kinds of fun, that one. Because it didn't really go in with the heavy themes at
Mhm.
all. It was like a fun werewolf romp, you might call
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
Um,
that's the other way to go, right? Where it is like it's almost comic book. It's about the action and the violence and the blood and the grue and whatnot. That works really well, I
yeah, like
find. That
Dog Soldiers.
works. Oh yeah, honestly, best werewolf film in years, right?
Yeah, that's a great
The
one.
best werewolf film. I mean, I can't believe they managed to make those werewolves really frightening,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
creepy and
Um,
gangly and strange, and they move in this really strange and weird way.
yeah, they
Yeah,
are
loved
angry,
it.
aren't they?
They're odd, aren't they? They move in that very unnatural, almost puppet-like way, which worked for them.
Yeah, yeah. I do. I really love finding like a great werewolf book or film,
Yeah,
but and I always like celebrate that because I'm like, oh, good. This is.
it's
I
hard,
have
isn't
no
it?
huh?
It's hard to find, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah, and with witches and stuff, I've got no problem with like sort of like YA witches or anything like that. Like that's like all really good if like that's what you're in the mood
Yeah,
for.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, I'm like, where are all the really nasty, um, you know, like the like where are all the baby sacrificing witches gone?
Yeah,
That's what I want to know,
like
George.
proper cult. Like I mean, like what the witch does, yeah, where it
Yeah,
takes like the Puritans' idea of what witches were, that very genuine fear they had, which is totally misguided and mythological, obviously, treats it as though it's real.
yeah, I
That's
really enjoyed
brilliant.
that film.
I mean, honestly, The Witch just blew my mind when I saw it for the first time. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe how good it was.
I
That
loved it.
conceit of taking the religious fears, the superstitions of the Puritan settlers and treating it with complete legitimacy,
Yeah,
complete sincerity.
I
What a
love those stories. Where it's like, oh, look at this thing that everyone's afraid of. Turns out they were
yeah.
absolutely right.
Turns out it's there, it's real. The
Yeah,
devil, witches, familiars, all of this stuff. That is utterly, utterly brilliant. I love the fact that the film eschews irony. It completely eschews irony. So it's not judging these people, these characters for having these beliefs and for
mhm.
fearing these things. It's allowing for that and it's exploring it as though it's real.
Yeah,
I I couldn't get over how clever that is. I couldn't, and it's not looking at it either with a postmodern eye. It's looking at it with their eyes. These things are real. There are witches, there are demons, there are curses, there's possession. There's even God, who seems to be also a thing to be massively afraid of in this universe.
Oh, I love demons and the devil. Like when I'm watching, especially if I'm watching a horror film, if the thing that's going on turns out to be the devil, I'm always like, oh, goody.
I'm kind of in. Yeah, I'm kind of in. I mean, I always like. And there's frames of the devil. There are different like types of the devil you can go for. So you can go like right down the Exorcist route, where the devil is pure elemental negativity, which is kind of fun. Or you can go down the Miltonian route, where he has that element, but he's also more identifiable with humanity and human drives than God is, which I've always found very interesting.
Well, if you I'm making myself sound a certain way on this podcast, but I'm doing it anyway. Have you ever read the Satanic Bible?
Oh, Anton LaVey's book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So I did find a lot of it, like, silly.
Yeah.
A lot of the Hail Satans and stuff, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to anyone, but I did find that the sort of like satanic values were kind of like more morally aligned with people who have empathy.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so interesting when people say Satanists in modern parlance, in present day parlance. There's like so many gradations of what that means. So yeah, absolutely. There are some people who believe that Satan is real and that they worship him literally. But those people, ironically, are kind of inverse Christians. They believe in the mythology of Christianity, but they've just gone the opposite way. But then you get like the LaVeyan style Satanists who actually don't believe it's real at all. They don't believe in it mythologically, but they believe in it symbolically and morally. Which I kind of love. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are problems with LaVeyan Satanism as well. But overall, it's definitely more in keeping with what I consider to be moral and correct than...
Yeah, I think things like don't hurt animals, don't hurt children, look after people.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And also, nurse thine desires, I kind of run with that, take joy in things, take pleasure in things if you want to. See beauty in the world. Don't be afraid of that. Don't fast it away.
Yeah. At the same time, though, again, like, because I'm not religious, I don't, and I know LaVeyan Satanists don't actually believe in Satan.
No,
but
for the most part.
Huh?
For the most part, it's weird. It's like all things. It's complicated, but for the most part, I think if you're reading LaVey correctly, then you don't literally believe there's like a devil, like an actual force or entity called the devil. It's more like a metaphor,
Yeah, but for me, generally speaking, sort of Satan or Baphomet is a horror character, and it's my favorite.
Yes, I demons and devils kind of do it for me as well. I do like to see them turn up. Like returning to your collection, Catch Fire.
Yes.
I think everyone knows this situation. Everyone's got this in their life somewhere, where it may not necessarily be like a sister, or it can be like a friend or something like that. Someone who is. It's a relationship that's doomed, isn't it? It doesn't really matter what you try or what you do. And I know that one of the things I love about this story is I know for a fact some people are going to be reading it and screaming at Emily. They're going to be like, just forget it. She is bad news. She is the definition of toxic, right?
Yeah, of all stories in the collection, that's the one where the most people have like reached out to me and said, this is like my relationship with someone.
X, yeah. Yeah.
And it was which I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting to get any messages like that. Anything serious,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. But it is kind of nice to know that for some reason there was some sort of like feeling of kinship.
Well, I think it was real. It's just very well drawn. The relationship is very well drawn because it's very, 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 very identifiable. It feels real. It feels real, and I really feel sorry. I feel sorry for Matt in this
Oh yeah.
because he's trying hard. I think a lot of people who read this are going to be on Matt's side for the
Yeah.
most part. It's going to be like, yeah, listen to Matt
Yeah.
because he is correct here.
Yeah.
It's already over. What I love is it's over before the story starts.
Mhm.
Like this relationship doesn't really exist in any real sense. Emily's trying so hard to maintain it and to hold on to it, and she still feels beholden to it despite everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I was sometimes when I'm writing, usually if I write a story like that, when I finish it, I feel a bit like emotionally drained.
Yeah, I can see why.
And then that's why I like to follow up with something like Dead or just like Baking.
Yeah.
I need a little bit of like levity afterwards. Like a bit of
I mean, if you go to Omega, it might quite literally levity, right?
yes, yeah. I had fun
like
with the first one.
Emotionally, it's for me anyway. It was probably the darkest of the stories because most of them, even the ones that have certain darkness, have a certain wry humor about them.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't, as such. If there is a humor, it's gallows, isn't it? It's the humor of like being outside the fishbowl, looking in and knowing that it's really gonna get very, very bad.
Yeah, it felt a bit grim to write. I think I went off and watched something silly after it.
Yeah.
To just before I went to bed because I think I was afraid that I was gonna because well, I think everyone does this if they're writing when you try and get like as into the mind frame of the person as possible, and it's not a very nice place to go sometimes.
It's not, is it? I mean, Emily herself is not a bad person at all. She's not a bad character, but you have to get into the sister's mindset as well, don't you? And that is so dark, and it's recognizing this type of person.
Yeah, it's anxiety inducing.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can well imagine. I mean, like, in modern parlance, triggering, it's the kind of stuff that is kind of triggering, and in a good way, in a very good way, because it just sparks familiarity. And the fact that it's this person who is going to usher in the apocalypse. This wretched person. And it's because of her wretchedness. That's why it's going to happen. Love it. Love it.
Oh, I'm glad. So I'm glad. I had a great time writing that book because I kind of like had the concept in mind, and then I redrafted those stories a lot because I was trying to thread little bits and pieces and clues for like the overall thing of the book, even though it's called The End, so it's the end. Mm-hmm. Did you get that most people didn't catch that I can't remember any of my own characters' names now. In Omega, my main character, what is her name? I can't remember.
Good question.
Grace.
Omega. Grace, no. Her name's Grace.
No, wait, Grace is in Dead.
Oh no, hang on. No, you're right. It's where are we? Omega, here we are. Pastor Bob, of course. Maddie.
So a lot of people like just didn't realize that is the same Maddie from the first story.
Oh. No, I did not click. It didn't occur to me. I didn't like.
Yeah, I thought it depends. Like if you I think someone that reviewed it said, I think these are connected because I think, and it's just because they read the book like all in one go in one sitting. So like I think if you read it fast, then you might like be like, oh wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just I started feeling guilty about Maddie. I was like, oh, she's had enough already.
Yeah, I mean, 2 stories worth. She's had double the apocalypse, right?
Yeah, without even realizing it.
Without realizing it. Yeah. Ouch. Ouch. But no, I love that. I've got a real soft spot for short story collections that have a like really strong theme and running elements through them. And that, yeah, it did it for me. I thought it was great. I mean, I think I read it in like 2 halves. I mean, that's the other thing about the Black Shuck Shadows books in general. They are so readable.
Yeah, I
So
love
readable.
those. I love them. If I want to read one of those, I try to make sure I've got enough time to like do the whole book in one because this short, and I just like to. I really enjoyed Rachel Knightley's Beyond Glass. I think hers is called. Because she had a couple of little connecting things.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think one of the best crafted short story collections I've ever read, and it still blows my mind, is Kit Power's A Warning About Your Future Enslavement.
That's very good, isn't it, Kit? I actually read like the early drafts of that short story collection because Kit sent it for like feedback. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's really brilliant.
Oh god, it's so good. My mind was spinning about how he had like the brain power to conceive of it, and actually, because so for people who don't know it, is the full title is A Warning About Your Future Enslavement that you will dismiss as a collection of short stories and essays by Kit Power. By Kit Power.
Yeah, by Kit Power.
Yeah, and it's like essays and short stories by Kit Power that are like threaded together through like a central narrator.
Yes, it's really interesting. He's got like like a structure, like a scaffold that connects all of the stories together. And it is very, very clever. I love that stuff. I've got a real soft spot for that when writers do that.
It was so ominous because that the central thing going through that, I was just disturbed. I was like, what is it? What is happening?
I mean, each of those stories and essays is kind of disturbing in and of itself because it is. I mean, it's what the title says it is. It is about imminent systemic collapse. That's what that collection is about. Which is, I mean, obviously, it's a preoccupation of Kit's. You know, it runs through his fiction. And it runs through that collection in a beautiful way, but it is dark. I mean, those stories, a lot of them are really, really nasty.
Yeah, he's oh god, he's so talented.
Kit's good. Kit's
he's so good.
Very good. I'm very honoured to be associated with him. Always. But like, I mean, it is a preoccupation for me. I do this in my work, you know. I've done this with everything I've ever written. You know, all of my short story collections have a similar thing going on. I like it. I enjoy it. I think it lends short story collections in particular. It lends them not just a through line, but a rhythm. It gives them flavor and a sense of greater import than they might otherwise have.
I love writers who kind of like have a thing and they're really good at exploring it. I love everything that Kit's written. I recently made a video for Happy Goat Horror entitled "The Best Horror Writer You've Never Heard Of."
Yes.
About Kit, and I know people have heard of him, but just like in the sort of like wider global scope.
They have on this channel. They've heard a lot about Kit on this channel.
He's so good. Since the first book I read of Kit's, I've been telling anyone that will listen to me to read Kit Power.
No, honestly, I mean his work is really, it can be like phenomenally dark. I mean, my God, some of it is like it's like one read per year because you will not come out feeling correct if you read it more than once, you know. but it's all very good. The fiction and the non-fiction. Obviously, I mean, I was still so honored that he gave me the My Life in Horror series to do.
Oh, you're doing such a great job with it.
Oh, thank you.
It's
I mean, well, it's one of those things where I felt obliged to make it as good as I possibly. Kit did such a brilliant job with that series.
Oh, he's equally talented with like non-fiction as he is with fiction. He's just great at telling you a story, whether it's from real life or yeah, he's
Honestly, yeah, he is. Kit's great. Kit is like the real deal. The real deal.
yeah, and I feel like excited that like I've so far I've just been like reading everything he puts out as he puts it out, and I'm excited to see. Like, I wholeheartedly believe that he's got like a long career coming in publishing.
I think so.
I'm excited to see him like actually get his break. He
will. I'm sure.
Yeah.
He will. He's sort of edging towards it. There's more exposure happening now.
Yeah.
We managed to somehow bag that Hellraiser thing last year.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was just friggin' amazing. That was. I don't know how that happened, but it was brilliant. One step closer to Barker. I mean, for me, that is just gravy. That is the most brilliant thing.
I know that would be sort of like me getting to do something that's officially anything to do with Stephen King.
Can you imagine? I mean, he's a legend, isn't he? I mean, like,
yeah,
the guy is synonymous with horror. You could put his picture next to the definition of it in the dictionary.
Yeah, I'm still getting my Clive Barker education, and
really?
Yeah, he's relatively new to me, and I got like so angry that I hadn't like read him before.
Wow,
so
I kind of envy you that, to be honest.
Oh, I'm having he's so good.
Honestly,
yeah,
he's like on another level to like everyone, isn't he? He's like in some other universe.
Mm-hmm. Who are your sort of like? Do you have authors that are your like current obsessions, like newer people that you found?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. Laura Marrow stuff. I mean, when there was that huge explosion in women in horror, about 5 years ago, you had Priya Sharma, Georgina Bruce coming out. You had Laura Marrow. I actually got all three of their first short story collections in like one delivery and read them all, and it was the first time in years where I sat there and it was like, this is new. These are the kinds of stories I have never read before in my life. I had never read anything like them before, and I was like, this is where it's going. This is how things are gonna like open up in the genre. This is these new concerns and these new styles of stories, these new voices. Yeah, that's kind of where my interests lie at the moment.
Yeah, I subscribe to Georgina's newsletter. She's hilarious.
Yeah, she is. She's very fun, very profound as well, like very insightful.
Yeah, I've got I have a few obsessions at the moment. So I've got like Adam Neville and Tim Levin are like my longer running ones, where I just love everything they put out basically at the moment. And then newer, I've just Gemma Amor I'm very into at the moment, and Rachel Harrison I've just discovered.
Yes.
Yeah, I just read Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison, and I've never been happier in my life. So I immediately went online and added everything she's ever written to my wish list.
That is the best thing ever, isn't it? When you find a writer like that, where you're like, oh, I've got to get everything.
Yeah, I may have had a little late night shop of everything Gemma Amor has ever written last night. An accidental.
More recently, Paula Dash. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, I've got is it We Are Here to Hurt Each Other?
Have you read it yet?
No.
Honestly, that I read it and I was like, she is the most sincere air of Barker I have ever come across.
Really?
It's
Oh,
so beautiful. It knocked me on my ass, that short story collection.
I'm excited.
Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. Eric is just carving out a space out there.
Didn't Eric just get a book deal with
Yep.
Norman Reedus's
Yeah.
I'm so happy for him. Like
I
that's
mean, Eric started as well. Eric started from such humble beginnings, like a self-published book that did
yeah.
phenomenally well and deservedly so. I mean, it's an incredible career, and their work. Oh my god!
Mm-hmm.
Again,
Yeah. I
there's
love. Sorry, go on.
there's a lot of stuff, isn't there? It's an embarrassment of riches out there. I find that part of on a personal level, part of the problem. It's like there's so much I want to read. There's so much
I know you'll never get through it all before you die. Like that's a great anxiety of mine. Like I will never read all the books I want to read before I shuffle off the mortal coil.
You've got, I mean, like at the moment, I am so magpie in that regard. You know, I'm so magpie about it. I will just flip from one thing to the other, and I'll pick up all these collections and novels, and just, you know, it's so. But isn't it a wonderful thing?
Yeah,
it's so cool to be in that position.
Something that I've really loved seeing recently as well is indie, like people who started as indies, like Eric. Like watching in real time, like their careers going off, because publishing is really hard to get into now. Because you've got like your big five, as they say, where you typically get an agent, and then an agent will sell your book to one of these publishers, and that's like sort of the traditional dream for people. But that is I've been recently getting the feeling that in order to get an agent, you have to have an audience already now.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. And also, it's not necessarily the best way to do it anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, Adam Neville went indie after having representation and publishing through oh god, I've already forgotten who published his first bunch of books now. But he was doing really well. But yeah, I've watched a lot of podcasts where he's talked about his decision to like just basically do it by himself, and I think it's just the consensus for some reason in mainstream books is people don't like horror, which is not true.
It's absurd, isn't it? I mean, they must be so disconnected from the market that they ought to operate in if that's what they believe, because it's huge. It's huge. I mean, it's so huge. It's almost impossible to get a bead on. There's so much stuff out there. There's so many voices erupting all over the place, and new voices at that, who are bringing their own concerns and their own new issues and subjects to it. It's brilliant. It's just such a lovely time to be operating in. And I think, like, you know, I mean, I know that as in any sort of like community of human beings, there is going to be stuff. There's going to be drama. There's going to be this and there's that. But I do find that I think we need to celebrate that more.
Yeah, I something that I just really love about the indie horror spaces is like it doesn't feel like people are in competition with each other to me.
No. It's so mutually supportive. That's what's always shocked me, actually, from the very beginning when I first started getting stuff published. It's how nice and how mutually supportive everyone has been.
Yeah, I feel like there's just room for all of us.
Yeah.
Like there doesn't have to be there doesn't have to be a limit on the number of great indie authors there are selling books, and people who love to read will buy more than one book.
Absolutely. And we are all unique voices. You know, every single one of us, no matter what similarities we might have, we are all exploring and expressing our own things in our own unique ways. So, you know, there's space for every voice out there. It is not a competition. And I think treating it as a competition would probably be the worst. I think it would eat your mind, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think the only time where anything is officially a competition is if you're looking at awards.
Yeah.
But you know, that's that's friendly though, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely. And I found that like a lot of, I mean, it must be lovely to have them, but at the same time, it's really not that big a deal, is it?
No, I have been excited though because the end has made the final ballot for the Imagine Awards.
Yeah, it's
Um,
brilliant.
I was very surprised to open that email. Delighted because I've never had anything nominated for anything before. So, I don't think I care if I actually win. I'm just thrilled that that it was put in front of people that liked it. So,
Well, that is superb. Congratulations. That
oh,
is
thank you.
absolutely superb. And no, I loved reading it. I really did. It was so much fun. And like I
Oh,
said, I
thank
kind
you.
of read it in two halves, And I imagine if I'd had like a couple of days off, it would have probably been in one.
Oh, I really appreciate that, George. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
I think I've done better so far with the end than I did with my first collection. I spent a lot more time on it, and and also I kind of like, I know to try and market my own book this time, which
Yeah.
has probably helped.
I'm terrible at that. I am so bad at that. It's unbelievable.
It's the worst.
It is, isn't it? Because you always feel like you almost feel like you're being a bit hucksterish, don't you? Like you, and it's not the case. It's just something you've got to do, isn't it? It's just part of the whole thing. But I find it difficult. I find it hard with my own stuff.
Yeah, I got no problem saying to people, "Hey, listen, guys, I just read this great book by Gemma and Moore, and you should all
Right.
everyone drop what you're doing and go read this Gemma and Moore book." And then when I've got something out, I'm like, please, if everyone doesn't mind, if you
Yes.
you haven't got to buy it, if you could just
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I'm
If you just
exactly the
admit
same.
sorry for spamming, sorry for spamming.
Yeah, I know the feeling. You don't want to feel like you're being egregious, do you? Like you're kind of muscling it or stepping on anyone's toes or anything.
It's bizarre. I always feel like
odd,
I'm
isn't it?
spamming people if I'm trying to just promote my own stuff, so I do it sparingly. But then if I see other authors promoting this stuff, it doesn't bother me at all. So I don't. I never.
It's like
think,
share
this is bad.
immediately,
Yeah.
There, let's get that stuff out there. Share.
And in fact, even better if it's an author that I've like been waiting for their next book to come out,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, good, there it is.
There it is. Yeah.
It's out now. I can go get it.
Oh, brilliant. Well, Kayleigh, thank you so much for coming on. And guys, The End by Kayleigh Dobbs. It's available over at Black Shuck Books at the moment. It's really good fun. It's
Thank you, George.
it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Is there anything else that you'd like to pimp out before we go?
Oh, well, this isn't my own, but Rachel Harrison's Black Sheep is really good, and also Tim Levin's Among the Living. Still harping on about those.
No, brilliant. I mean, that's so nice. I will actually put links below to both of them, and also to where you can buy The End as well. As for myself, guys, it's the same as usual. You can find me knocking about here on Exaggerated Elegy or on Our Lives in Horror, depending on where you're listening to this. There's loads of stuff on the Exaggerated Elegy channel at the moment. We've just returned my usual podcasting group. We've just returned to doing Hannibal Digested, where we look at like each episode of the Hannibal series, Brian Fuller's Hannibal, one by one, because it is the best TV show ever made, and we'll brook no argument.
I wasn't gonna.
Well, how could you? As for my published work, if you go over to strangeplaygrounds.com or if you go to Amazon and type in George Daniel Lee, you'll find links to all of my short story collections and all the anthologies and collections and things that I've been published in. We mentioned it during the course of this podcast, but if you go over to Arrow Films and look up the Quartet of Torment, the new UHD or Blu-ray set for Hellraiser, the aforementioned Kit Power and myself are on the Hellbound disc. We're on featurette Hell Is What They Wanted, and it's an hour and 40-minute chat that Kit and I had live about Hellraiser and Clive Barker and all related stuff, and we're dead proud of it. We're really proud of it. It came out brilliantly well. So go and check that out if you would. Oh, well, Kayleigh, thank you once again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Anytime. Anytime. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.